The Milwaukee Brewers franchise isn't known to be a very historically good one, and well, that's because they aren't. After their first season of existence in 1969, the Brewers didn't make the postseason for the first time until 1981. 12 years later, one of the rare times you look up to the Marlins, who took just 4 years to win the World Series, let alone make the playoffs. The 1981 postseason berth wasn't even that fully legit though, because the 1981 season had a 2-month delay in the middle due to a strike that lasted from June 12th through August 10th, when the second half started. The Brewers made the playoffs with a 62-47 record, going on to lose to the Yankees, who they'd actually give a run for their money and force a Game 5 after being down 0-2 in the series. 1982 was back to a full normal year, and the Brew Crew was back in business, not just making the postseason again, but going all the way to the World Series, losing to the Cardinals in 7 games. Now cue the disappointment again. For the next 25 years, starting in 1983, the Brewers were a team of disappointment, missing the playoffs every year. That is until 2008, where they'd finally make the playoffs, lose in the first round of the eventual World Series winning Phillies, go back to an under 500 team for the next 2 seasons before winning the National League Central Division in 2011 for the first time ever, beat the Diamondbacks in a dramatic Game 5 series, but lose to the division rival and eventual World Series winning Cardinals in the NLCS. The Brewers wind up falling into irrelevancy yet again for the next 6 years until 2018 rolled around, a year that actually was the beginning of something special in Milwaukee, because not only did they become a winning team that year, but it was sustainable, and it continued and continued. Yet as much as they've actually been winning since 2018, the Brewers haven't been able to truly change the entire outlook and reputation of their franchise. Why is this? Who did this? Do the Brewers know?
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
During that dreadful 25-year playoff drought where Wisconsin practically didn't have a baseball team to root for along with the Milwaukee Bucks and Green Bay Packers, the Brewers decided to build a new ballpark in one of the largest construction projects in Wisconsin history, with the actual building process beginning in late 1996. But about 3 years later, a tragic incident happened that took the life of 3 construction workers. A crane that had been brought in to build the roof collapsed while lifting a 450-ton roof section during windy conditions, and there's actually footage of this happening as the camera crew happened to be filming construction of the ballpark that day. Not a great start to this place's history, and I think history has gone on to prove that. Do we have a new curse on our hands? The curse of the crane? I don't know, but a lot of the way this team has ended up since moving to this ballpark in 2001 definitely implies that destiny isn't on their side. Even disregarding the on-field play and the actual ballpark itself, the most haunted hotel that teams visit in baseball just so happens to be in Milwaukee. The Pfister Hotel, one with several stories of players, grown men, getting scared because of what they thought was paranormal activity, with Mookie Betts, one of the biggest stars in the game, going out of his way to rent an Airbnb just to avoid the hotel while the Dodgers were in town last year, with him being quoted as saying, "You can tell me what happened after. I just don't want to find out myself."
Apparently, they're afraid of ghosts. Big wuss too. Big wuss. So, I mean, I guess those guys have ghost issues.
As for the on-field play, like I said, the Brewers made it to October twice, from 1983 through 2017, getting knocked out both times to the eventual World Series winners. But in 2018, things started to change in a big way, and for the better. This video is brought to you by Ewan Racing, the gaming chair. It's absolutely incredible. I love it. So as you can see here, there's some pillows that come with it, one for your back, lower back area, your head. It's an incredibly comfortable chair. You can make it go up, down, however makes you feel comfortable. You can literally sleep in it. You can obviously play video games in it and just chill. And it actually holds a ton of weight. It holds up to 400 pounds of weight. Most other chairs really only hold 300. This holds up to 400. So obviously that means it's very strong and very durable. You can't really worry about it breaking as much as you would nearly for other ones. So I absolutely recommend this chair. I have no complaints about this chair at all. You can lay in it, sit in it, sleep in it. I love obviously working on my videos with it. Just look at this. I almost just fell asleep just now. It's amazing. I love it. So convenient. Mwah. Perfect chair. Perfect chair. And you can get your very own and not spend as much on it by using promo code iTalk. That's promo code iTalk for 20% off. That'll be in the description in the comments, so go check that out, and now enjoy the rest of the video. Before the 2018 season, the Brewers traded for and rescued outfielder Christian Yelich from the fire-selling Marlins. Milwaukee was already showing some promise coming off a 2017 season where they were pretty good and in the race until the very end, and little did anyone know, but they just added what would end up being maybe the best hitter in baseball over the next 2 years. In 2018, Christian Yelich went off, becoming an all-star for the first time, hit 36 home runs, 15 more than his previous career high, drove in 110 RBIs, the first time he'd driven in more than 100, led the National League in batting average, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS plus, total bases, and won the MVP award without much of an argument. He was incredible, and so were the Brewers as a team. The offense overall was pretty damn good. Jesus Aguilar had a career year and popped 35 homers. Travis Shaw also had a career year and smacked 32 homers. Ryan Braun was pretty good, so was Lorenzo Cain. The starting rotation was a solid group, and that's when the elite bullpen came into play. Corey Knebel, who was one of the best relievers in 2017, regressed a little bit in 2018, but no worries because the Brewer bullpen had some more help. And help is a massive understatement. Hard-throwing righty Jeremy Jeffress was nasty, pitching over 75 innings with an ERA down toward 1. And of course, Josh Hader's coming out party, where he just basically struck out everyone and was able to go multiple innings while doing it. He was the ultimate weapon out of the bullpen, almost unfair, especially with other guys around him. And because of all this success from all these guys, led by their really good manager Craig Counsell, the Brew Crew went toe-to-toe with the Cubs for the division, taking things into a tie-breaking game 163 at Wrigley Field. And despite the game being in Wrigley in Chicago, a lot of Brewers fans showed up and left happy, with the team going into Chicago and winning the game, winning the division, and forcing the mighty Cubs to play a winner-take-all wildcard game that they'd lose. As for Milwaukee, their run was just beginning. They'd handle the team that beat the Cubs with ease, sweeping the Colorado Rockies, a team that didn't score a single run after Game 1 of the series. Next up, the Dodgers. They'd win a Game 1 which included their starting pitcher Brandon Woodruff going deep off of Clayton Kershaw and going up 6-1 at one point. The Dodgers almost came back and failed, but that didn't happen in Game 2. The Brewers had a chance to take a commanding 2-0 series lead to LA, going up 3-0 and being up 3-2 just 6 outs away until Justin Turner said see ya off Jeffress. Dodgers win Game 2, and the series would go back and forth until it couldn't anymore in Game 7. The MVP said boom and started the game off strong for Milwaukee, but a bomb by Cody Bellinger and a suck-it 3-run shot by Yasiel Puig put the game, the series, and the season to rest for Milwaukee. It was a sad way to end things, but don't worry, it gets sadder. The 2019 Brewers regressed just a tad bit overall, except for the fact that Yelich actually had a better season than he did in 2018, basically not going back-to-back with the MVP award because he was hurt and played 26 less games than Cody Bellinger did, and actually had his season completely come to an end after fracturing his kneecap on a foul ball. So the Brewers were basically limping into the postseason as a wildcard team now, having to go to the nation's capital for a winner-take-all game. The bullpen wasn't the same except for Hader. He was still fantastic, except for the final pitch he'd throw that season, when 15-year-old Juan Soto lined a baseball that would be misplayed in right field by Trent Grisham, a place where Yelich would have been if he weren't hurt. And that was it. Time to play some golf. Ever since Yasiel Puig told all of Milwaukee to suck it, the Brewers have only won a single playoff game. In 2020, they'd make it again as a wildcard team despite finishing under 500 on the shortened year, but 2020 doesn't count, so none of it matters, despite the fact that they get swept by the Dodgers. But in 2021, the Brewers were back to being on top, at least on top of their division, winning 95 games and finishing 5 ahead of the second-place Cardinals, and there were also some emerging stars. The pitching was beyond fantastic. It was insane, and mostly the reason the Brewers made the playoffs. The entire rotation was full of good options. Brandon Woodruff had his best year yet. Josh Hader was still stupid out of the bullpen, actually having arguably his best year yet now as the team's full-time closer, with 2020 Rookie of the Year Devin Williams and his disgusting changeup also in the mix. So Williams was kind of a new guy, and so was another pitcher, a starter, Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes wasn't entirely new though. He actually had pitched the last 3 years leading up to 2021. He was out of the bullpen mostly, did well in 2018, was absolutely horrendous in 2019, having an ERA near 9 in 49 innings, but had a much better time out there in the shortened 2020, which then led into a historic 2021 season for Burnes. In 2021, Corbin Burnes led all of baseball in ERA, had the highest strikeouts on average in baseball, and the best strikeout to walk ratio in baseball. He also gave up the least amount of home runs while also having the lowest FIP, aka fielding independent pitching, in baseball. So even though Burnes actually got unlucky, he still had the lowest ERA in the game. Incredible stuff. The Brewers really had a special starting pitcher on their hands now. Totally a guy you're going to want to keep forever. Unfortunately, the 2021 Brewers, despite winning the first playoff game that year, would go on to lose 3 in a row to the eventual World Series winning Braves, with Josh Hader once again giving up the last blow. So not only is another good season seemingly gone to waste for the Brewers, but there was also another concern: Christian Yelich. Yelich, who had signed a 9-year, $215 million extension with the team after the 2019 season, was not very good in 2021. He did have some back issues and missed a good chunk of games, but his hitting was not even in the same stratosphere as it was just a couple years earlier. Nothing changed in 2022. Yelich, who was healthy the entirety of that season, was still just an average hitter. The overall power and production was down, which was not very unique for the Brewers offense. And this time the pitching wasn't able to salvage enough wins, with the Brewers completely missing out on the playoffs. But the destruction of this team, and what we now realize was the beginning of the potential destruction of the franchise, began a few months earlier in the midst of the 2022 season. After starting off as dominant as ever, Josh Hader started to struggle badly. I mean, he was getting crushed, with the team deciding that was it, that it was time to trade him, sending Hader off to San Diego in exchange for 4 players. And immediately, this did not go well in the Brewers clubhouse. In particular, Devin Williams, Hader's bullpen mate for the last couple of years, was basically speechless and just clearly distraught over his guy getting dealt.
A lot of things that don't really make sense, you know. I don't know. I don't really have much to say about it.
Now, I actually liked this trade for the Brewers when it happened, and I went on the record saying that. Well, it turns out I was wrong, and more importantly, the Brewers were wrong. I get something wrong and it doesn't impact anything. But it's not quite the same for the Brewers. They get something wrong and it impacts everything, and in this case, the beginning of the destruction, or implosion, I should say. The 4 players the Brewers got for Hader were left-handed reliever Taylor Rogers, right-handed pitcher Dinelson Lamet, outfielder Estuario Ruiz, and left-handed pitcher Robert Gasser. Taylor Rogers ended up signing with the Giants a few months later. Dinelson Lamet was designated for assignment just 2 days after the trade, with the team's general manager David Stern saying the roster fit for Lamet became quote-unquote a little tougher, and that they were still hopeful that they could keep him in their system. Well, the Rockies immediately squandered that hope, which is just about the only time you could ever say such a thing about that team, claiming Lamet off of waivers 2 days later. So that's already half of the return you got for Josh Hader gone, just like that. Lamet was gone before he even knew he was traded, and Taylor Rogers would join his twin brother Tyler on the Giants. Okay, what about Ruiz? Oh, he's on Oakland now. Robert Gasser, shockingly at this point, is still with the Brewers organization, and he actually had a really strong 2023 season in his first shot at AAA. That's of course encouraging to see, but looking at the overall trade now, it's really hard to see it being a good one. So that happened, and what was the next move in the Brewers playbook? Let's piss off our best pitcher. Before the 2023 season, Corbin Burnes and the Brewers went to an arbitration hearing over about $750,000. Burnes wanted $10.75 million, the Brewers were offering $10.1. The Brewers won the case, but even if Burnes won the case, the relationship was now strained, something Burnes himself even said.
You kind of find out your true value. You think you work hard for 7 years in the organization and 5 years with the big league team, and you get in there and basically they value you much different than what you thought you contributed to the organization. I think there was obviously other ways that they could have gone about it. Probably been a little more respectful with the way they went about it. There's no denying that the relationship was definitely hurt from what perspired over the last couple weeks.
2023 Brewers went back to winning. They weren't insanely dominant by any means, especially the offense, but what else can you expect in that regard at this point? There were just 2 full-time hitters in the Brewers lineup last year that were good: Christian Yelich and William Contreras. That's it. It's obviously great seeing Yelich have a good year again. Not nearly as good as his MVP days, but still better. But the hitting was still really bad overall. The pitching, as usual, was the much stronger part of the team, and the Brewers won the division title, their 3rd in the last 5 years. There's a little bit of a different format now, though, since the last time the Brewers made it into October. Instead of automatically getting a 5-game series for winning the division, since the Brewers were the division winners with the least amount of wins, they have to play in a 3-game wildcard series. Since they won the division, they get to be home, and they were going to play an 84-win Diamondbacks team. Pretty clear who should win this one. Corbin Burnes got the start in Game 1 and threw a stinker. After the Brewers took an early lead, Burnes would give up back-to-back homers at one point, 3 homers overall, with the D-backs taking Game 1 6-3. 3. Game 2 was more the exact same thing. The Brewers jumped out to an early lead only to then give up 5 unanswered runs, and that ended up being your ball game and your entire season. And this one had to be the most anticlimactic ending to the recent Brewers playoff runs. I feel like most people probably don't even remember what happened in that series. The Brewers were just dusted off in their own park, and another disappointing winter begins. Except things were only about to get worse. Once the offseason officially began, there were reports that the Brewers were open to trading basically anyone on the team. Nobody really was untouchable. Even the manager, Craig Counsell, who's been the Brewers manager for the last 9 seasons, he even realized it was time to get the hell out of this sinking ship, leaving to sign with the rival Cubs for the largest, most expensive contract for a manager in baseball history. The Brewers owner was apparently shocked when he was told of the news by Counsell, asking Counsell if he was messing with him. Buddy, no. When your offer to Counsell was not what the Cubs were willing to dish up, just like any free agent player who happily declines an offer from your Brewers, if you do even offer one at all, Counsell happily became a Cub, and that says a lot. Even with the historic money, it's still weird considering Counsell was a lifelong Brewer, a Wisconsin native, born and raised in a suburb near Milwaukee. He played for the Brewers, became a part of their front office, and then became the most successful manager in the team's history. It was too much money to pass up. Apparently the Brewers did offer what would still have made Counsell the richest manager in the game, but the Cubs just went above and beyond, stealing him away. Not too long after that, the Brewers did spend some money, signing one of their players to a historic contract extension. It was Jackson Chourio, and he was given a guaranteed $82 million over the next 8 years. Why is this historic? Because Chourio has yet to play a single big league game. He's the Brewers' top prospect and looked at as one of, if not the best prospects in baseball. And yes, this is a good thing, but there's more to this overall philosophy in terms of spending. Other than Chourio, the Brewers have given out only one more significant contract, and this just happened recently when they signed Rhys Hoskins to a 2-year deal worth $34 million, where he can opt out after the first year. Hoskins didn't play at all last year because of a freak accident in a spring training game where he suffered a terrible injury. So he had to now go out and take a prove-it deal where he can then go back out on the market and try to get a bigger, longer contract. And this is exactly what this Brewers contract is. So even if Hoskins has an insane season back from his injury, he'll immediately go back out on the market, and we all know the Brewers aren't going to sign him then. It's not a bad move for now, but there's nothing about it that shows long-term commitment to winning. So what's next on the Brewers' list of plays up their sleeve? Trade their best pitcher. Since that report of being open to trading anyone, nobody had gotten traded. That is until now. Out of absolutely, well, seemingly nowhere, the Brewers traded Corbin Burnes to the Orioles, who are changing the entire way they operate their new franchise with the new ownership coming in. The Orioles needed a starter, they got a damn starter, and fleeced the Brewers while doing it. Even though Burnes has just 1 year left before becoming a free agent, the Brewers should have gotten a really good return for trading what has been one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last 3 years. Instead, they got an infielder who the Orioles didn't value enough to put into the mix, a left-handed pitcher who hasn't really shown anything to be too excited about in his 6 years being in the minor leagues, along with the 34th pick of this year's draft. Now, this wouldn't have been an awful trade in return under other circumstances. In fact, it actually is a pretty good move for the Brewers. If you want your AAA team to be a bit better, again, you're trading away one of the best pitchers in the game. This is not the return the Brewers should have been looking for. And now that Burnes is gone, who's to say Devin Williams, one of the best relievers in baseball, isn't next? It's pretty clear that the Brewers have no intention of keeping their best players, and they're at least starting to attempt a rebuild. But a rebuild can only be successful if you get good value from trading your best players. We don't know how these guys the Brewers traded for will fare out yet, but instantly the value just isn't there to match who they traded away, even if they were never going to sign Corbin Burnes in free agency or give him a contract extension anyway. And that brings me to my next point. The Brewers don't seem to have any interest in spending much money. That's been made pretty clear. The Rhys Hoskins deal doesn't count because it's a short-term deal that will last a couple years at most, and the better Hoskins is as a player, the sooner he's no longer a Brewer. The only big contract the Brewers have given out lately is to Chourio, but that's not a typical one. Chourio has yet to play a big league game, so the Brewers took a chance that he's going to be really good and sign him for 8 years, a deal that can potentially stretch out to as long as 10 years. But think about it, it's still not much money the Brewers gave out overall. $82 million guaranteed, and the max amount that could be made is $130 if it goes 10 years. The thought process behind this for the Brewers is of course to lock up who they feel could be one of the best players in baseball for not too much money. If he ends up being as advertised, he's not making much compared to what he then could get. But Chourio is looking at this from another standpoint. Without proving himself at all at the big league level, he now has life-changing money guaranteed coming his way no matter matter what, even if he sucks. So he's set financially, worst case scenario, and if he ends up being great, he'll become a free agent in his prime. Chourio is only 19 years old right now, so even if this deal goes to the maximum amount of years it can go, he'll hit the free agent market before even being 30, and if he's really that good, can probably get a $300 million plus deal. So I would say it's a win-win all around for both parties involved here, but the issue for Milwaukee is that this is what they're counting on. They've obviously made it clear that they won't be giving out a $300 million plus contract to anybody, or at least won't be spending a ton of money overall. So signing highly touted players to team-friendly deals like Chourio seems to be their only hope with that. Devin Williams seems like a goner, if not now, within the next year or so. I mean, any good pitcher on the team, starter or reliever, could very well be sent away. There's not much to gain from trading any of the hitters, unfortunately, even if they were smarter about the return compared to how they handled the Burns deal. The lineup just isn't impressive other than Contreras and Yelich, and Yelich still hasn't even fully proven that he's back to being a consistent hitter. Now factor in that the Brewers are in a division full of teams at least attempting to be on the come up. Will they all be successful at that? Probably not, but literally all of them. The Cardinals, who always try to win, the Cubs, who stole Milwaukee's manager, the Reds were one of the most exciting and young teams that summer, and even the Pirates feel like they can do something special. They have potential. All of these teams seem to be trending upward while the Brewers are going downward, and they really don't have anyone to blame but themselves. The hitting, of course, has been the biggest issue for a few years now, even when they've won, but two of the best pitchers in all of baseball, and Josh Hader a couple years ago, and now Corbin Burns, were traded away for what doesn't seem like equal value. The hitting might get better with Chourio hopefully panning out, but even if he does, there's no guarantee that that will be enough. And don't bank on any spending to make that happen. The Brewers were 24th in baseball on payroll last year, and with it almost being time to pay up for Corbin Burns, they sent him off to Baltimore for a weak return. This is a team that didn't even want to give Burns an extra $740,000. Forget it, along with any other valuable Brewers player. This ship is sinking fast, all because they've run this product into the ground without making much of an effort to improve it. They've essentially destroyed themselves from within, just like DC, Warner Bros, and Rocksteady are currently doing to their own brand, releasing a new bad video game about a team of evil people crapping on, disrespecting, and getting rid of the brand's most beloved characters. Seem familiar? But not to worry, the Brewers still can be a good team if the other 4 teams in their division aren't as good as they are trying to be, if the Brewers offense starts to get their shit together, if the ownership decides to start investing at least a little more into the team, if American Family Field doesn't collapse from the pain it's had to endure since its birth, if really a whole lot falls into place. So even if it's possible, just like anything, I wouldn't hold my breath. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this long, especially if you are a Brewers fan. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.